Welcome to Mystery Manor Narratives. I'm your host, Evelyn Thorne. If you're new here, we dive into the timeless world of classic mysteries, narrated just for you to unwind and escape. Today, we're embarking on a thrilling journey with the incomparable Hercule Poirot, in an original tale inspired by the Queen of Crime herself, Agatha Christie. Settle in with a cup of tea. Dim the lights, and let's begin. Blood at St. Valerie Courtyard, a Poirot murder mystery. This is a long one, perfect for those cozy evenings. Over 90 minutes of intrigue if you're listening at a relaxed pace. And remember, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Perhaps from a rainy London flat or a sunny courtyard somewhere exotic. Now, let's step back to the 1920s. Chapter 1. The Invitation to St. Valerie. Welcome to Mystery Manor Narratives, dear listeners. I'm your host, Evelyn Thorne, and tonight, we're stepping into the fog-draped world of 1920s England with the inimitable Hercule Poirot. Settle into your favorite armchair, perhaps with a steaming cup of Earl Grey, and let's unravel the enigma of blood at St. Valerie Courtyard, a Poirot murder mystery. This tale promises over 90 minutes of suspense, perfect for a cozy, thrilling evening. Oh, and do tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Is it a bustling city or a quiet countryside nook? Now let's begin. The autumn of 1925 cloaked London in a veil of mist, the kind that softened the edges of gaslit streets and whispered secrets to those who paused to listen. In his elegant apartment at Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot, the celebrated Belgian detective, sat by a crackling fire, his mustache impeccably waxed, his green eyes glinting with restless curiosity. The little gray cells, as he so fondly called them, yearned for a challenge. The past months had been a parade of trifles, stolen pearls, misplaced wills, and one particularly tedious case involving a runaway spaniel. Mon Dieu, Poirot where wealth and secrets intertwine. Très intéressant. He rose, his patent leather shoes gleaming, and began preparations. His valise was packed with care. A tin of his favored herbal tisane for his delicate digestion, a silver cigarette case engraved with his initials, a small notebook for capturing deductions, and a neatly folded handkerchief, order and method in every detail. By evening, Poirot was aboard a southbound train from Victoria Station, the rhythmic clatter of wheels a soothing counterpoint to his racing thoughts. The Sussex countryside unfurled beyond the window, a tapestry of golden fields, ancient hedgerows, and villages where time seemed to linger like the morning dew. At the quaint station of Amberley, a Rolls-Royce awaited, its chrome glinting under the weak station lamps. The driver, a broad-shouldered man in a peaked cap, introduced himself as Jenkins. "Mr. Poirot, sir. Lord Harrington sends his regards. St. Valerie's a short drive." His voice was clipped, his eyes guarded, and Poirot noted the slight tremor in his gloved hand as he opened the car door. A man who knows more than he says, Poirot thought, filing the observation away. The drive wound through lanes flanked by towering oaks, their leaves aflame in the twilight. St. Valerie Estate emerged like a vision from a Gainsborough painting, its Georgian facade of honey-colored stone rising against the darkening sky. Ivy clung to the walls, and tall chimneys exhaled wisps of smoke into the chill air. At its heart lay the famed courtyard, a quadrangle of manicured lawns, marble fountains, and rose arbors, enclosed by high walls and accessible only through heavy oak doors from the manor's interior. Local lore spoke of its creation by a Harrington ancestor, a soldier who sought solace after the Napoleonic Wars. To Poirot, it was a stage set for drama, its seclusion both romantic and foreboding. Lord Harrington greeted him at the grand entrance, a bear of a man in his 50s, his ruddy cheeks framed by a bristling mustache that rivaled Poirot's own. "Poirot, you've come at the perfect moment," he boomed, clasping Poirot's at dinner. "My wife, Amelia, keeps the household in order. My son, Arthur, a bit of a rogue, but good-hearted. My daughter, Eliza, dreams of art and independence. Headstrong, that one. Then there's Dr. Sinclair, our physician and old friend. And the staff. Graves, the butler, and young Lydia, the maid. Watch them, Poirot. I trust you to see what I cannot." Dinner was served in the dining hall, a spectacle of polished silver and candlelight. Lady Amelia Harrington presided with grace, her auburn hair swept up, her pearl necklace catching the glow. Yet Poirot noted the faint lines of worry around her eyes, betraying the warmth of her smile. "Mr. Poirot, how charming to have a detective among us," she said, her voice smooth as velvet. "Reginald speaks so highly of you." Arthur Harrington, 25 and rakishly handsome, lounged at the table, his tie askew and a cigarette smoldering between his fingers. "Father says you solve mysteries like a mathematician," he drawled, exhaling smoke. "Hope there's no need for that here." His casual tone belied a nervous glance toward his father. Eliza Harrington, a vision of the modern age with her bobbed hair and emerald flappered dress, leaned forward. "Mr. Poirot, have you been to Paris? I'm desperate to study art there, but father thinks it's frivolous." Her defiance was tempered by a quiver in her voice, and Poirot sensed a deeper conflict. Dr. Edmund Sinclair, a scholarly man with a neatly trimmed beard, engaged Poirot in talk of medical advancements. "Fascinating times, Mr. Poirot. We're on the cusp of curing diseases once thought fatal." Yet his hands fidgeted when Harrington mentioned the will, a detail Poirot stored away. Mr. Horace Graves, the butler, moved with the precision of a metronome, his face an unreadable mask. A faint scar on his cheek caught Poirot's eye, perhaps a relic of a less polished past. Miss Lydia Poole, the young maid, glided silently, clearing plates with downcast eyes. Whispers among with it, a sense that St. Valerie's tranquil facade concealed a darkness waiting to erupt. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Night. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Narratives. I'm Evelyn Thorne, guiding you through the shadowy twists of blood at St. Valerie Courtyard, a Poirot murder mystery. If you're just joining us, we're deep in a 1920s tale of intrigue with Hercule Poirot, and things are about to take a chilling turn. Picture yourself in a cozy nook, perhaps with a blanket and a flickering candle, perfect for this 90-minute journey of suspense. Don't forget to share in the comments where you're listening from. A misty London street, or a far-off seaside retreat. Now let's return to St. Valerie Estate, where the dawn brings a shocking discovery. The morning of October 1925 broke over St. Valerie Estate with a deceptive brightness, the Sussex sun casting golden rays across the dew-laden gardens. Hercule Poirot, ever an early riser, was already dressed in his immaculate suit, his stick tapping rhythmically as he strolled the gravel paths surrounding the manor. The air carried the crisp scent of autumn leaves and the faint perfume of late-blooming roses. His destination was the famed courtyard, a place Lord Harrington had spoken of with such pride the previous evening. Poirot's keen eyes took in its details, a quadrangle of manicured lawns, encircled by high stone walls topped with wrought iron spikes, accessible only through heavy oak doors from the main house. At its center stood a marble fountain, Saint Valerie herself carved in serene repose, water trickling softly from her urn. No windows overlooked the space directly, and the walls were unscalable without aid. A perfect enclave, or so it seemed. Poirot paused at the open gates, noting their sturdy lock. "The sanctuary, oui," he murmured, "but sanctuaries can hide secrets." He examined the ground. No footprints marred the soft earth, and the roses, though thorny, bore no signs of disturbance. Satisfied for now, he returned to the house, his mind already sifting through the previous night's observations. The guarded glances, the undercurrents of tension at dinner, of his jaw when Lord Harrington mentioned the family's finances. Eliza Harrington, vibrant despite the early hour, wore a bold red scarf that clashed with the somber mood. She spoke animatedly of her plans to visit Paris, but her voice faltered when her father shot her a stern look. "Eliza, we'll discuss your artist friend later," he said, his tone final. Poirot's ears caught the name, Victor Lang, a penniless painter, and filed it away. Dr. Edmund Sinclair, the family physician, sat quietly, his scholarly beard framing a face that seemed preoccupied. He toyed with a silver spoon, his eyes darting toward Lady Amelia when she spoke. "A fine morning for a walk, Mr. Poirot," he offered, but his voice lacked conviction. Poirot noted the faint sheen of sweat on his brow, unusual for the cool room. Mr. Horace Graves, the butler, served with his usual precision, his movements as measured as a clock's pendulum. His scar, barely visible in the morning light, seemed to deepen when Lord Harrington mentioned the courtyard. Miss Lydia Poole, the young maid, cleared plates with a ghostly grace, her eyes downcast but sharp, catching every word. Poirot overheard a kitchen maid whisper that Lydia had been seen arguing with the Lord's valet the previous week. Over what, no one knew. Lord Harrington himself was in high spirits, his booming voice filling the room as he discussed estate matters. "Poirot, after breakfast, join me in the study. I've some documents to show you. Nothing urgent, but I'd value your opinion." His joviality seemed forced, and Poirot sensed a man bracing for trouble. As the meal concluded, with the clatter of cups and the rustle of napkins, a piercing scream shattered the morning's calm. It came from the direction of the courtyard, a high, desperate wail that sent a chill through the room. The guests froze, then surged to their feet, Poirot leading the charge with surprising agility for a man of his stature. They burst through the oak doors into the courtyard, the morning light revealing a scene of horror. There, sprawled on the grass near the fountain, she gasped, before fainting. Arthur stared, his cigarette falling to the ground, his hands trembling. Eliza let out a choked sob, clutching her scarf as tears streamed down her face. Graves stood like a statue, his eyes fixed on the body, while Miss Poole whispered a prayer, her fingers twisting her apron. Poirot rose, his voice calm but commanding. "No one touches anything. This is murder, impossible yet accomplished. We must preserve the scene." The local constable, Sergeant Wilkins, arrived within the hour, a stout man with a bewildered expression. "Blimey, Mr. Poirot," he said, scratching his head. "Locked from the inside? No way in or out? Could it be suicide?" "Non," Poirot replied sharply. "The dagger is from the study's collection, a ceremonial piece, not one a man carries to end his life. The angle of the wound suggests another hand. And why lock himself in to die? No, this is murder, and we must uncover how." Whispers rippled through the gathering. Motives surfaced like shadows in the fog. Lady Amelia stood to inherit the estate, her headache now a convenient alibi. Arthur's gambling debts were no secret. £5,000 owed to unsavory lenders, Poirot learned from a servant's gossip. Eliza's forbidden love for Victor Lang had sparked heated arguments with her father. Dr. Sinclair's recent dispute with Harrington over a joint investment hinted at betrayal. Graves, loyal for decades, had been overheard muttering about delayed wages. And Miss Poole? Rumors swirled of an improper advance by the Lord, rebuffed with venom. Poirot surveyed the courtyard once more. The dagger bore no fingerprints, wiped clean. A scrap of silk, caught on a rose thorn near the fountain, fluttered in the breeze, perhaps from a lady's gown. A cigarette butt, half buried in the grass, matched Arthur's brand. Under a stone bench, a faint footprint, small, delicate, too small for a man's boot. The puzzle begins to form, Poirot mused, his eyes narrowing. As the body was carefully removed under Sergeant Wilkins' supervision, Poirot addressed the shaken household. Tension is mounting. Perfect for this 90-minute journey of suspense. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. A foggy village or a bustling city? Now, let's return to St. Valerie Estate, where the morning's horror sets Poirot's little gray cells ablaze. The sun hung low over St. Valerie Estate, its golden light doing little to dispel the pall of dread that had settled over the household. The courtyard, once a symbol of serenity, now felt like a silent witness to Lord Reginald Harrington's brutal murder. Hercule Poirot stood at its center, his patent leather shoes planted firmly on the grass, his eyes scanning the scene with the precision of a watchmaker. The marble fountain burbled softly, its statue of St. Valerie gazing down as if guarding secrets. The oak doors, locked from within at the time of the crime, stood ajar now, guarded by Sergeant Wilkins' constable, a young man who looked overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation. Poirot's mind was a whirlwind of observations. The dagger, embedded in Lord Harrington's chest, had come from the studies collection, a ceremonial blade not easily accessed. The absence of footprints, the sealed windows, the unscalable walls, all pointed to an impossible crime. Yet, as Poirot often said, the impossible must yield to the methodical. He turned to Sergeant Wilkins, who was scribbling notes with a furrowed brow. Monsieur, summon the household to the drawing room. It is time for Hercule Poirot to begin the questioning. The drawing room was a haven of velvet sofas, polished mahogany, and ticking clocks, its warmth a stark contrast to the chill of the morning's discovery. The family and staff gathered, their faces a mosaic of grief, fear, and suspicion. Lady Amelia Harrington sat rigidly, her hands clasped tightly, her headache forgotten in the wake of tragedy. Arthur Harrington paced near the fireplace, his cigarette case empty, his fingers twitching. Eliza Harrington perched. The headache kept me awake much of the night. Lydia brought me tea at 7, and I remained in bed until the scream. She glanced at the maid, who nodded silently. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And you saw no one? Heard nothing unusual? Nothing, she said, though her fingers tightened around her handkerchief. Poirot noted the gesture, a sign of nerves, perhaps. Next, Arthur, who stopped pacing to face Poirot. I was in the billiard room smoking until late, say 2 in the morning. Woke up around 8, had a drink to steady my nerves, then came to breakfast. His voice was defiant, but his hands betrayed him, clenching into fists. "Alone, Monsieur Arthur?" Poirot asked, his tone mild. "Yes, alone," Arthur snapped. No one else was fool enough to stay up that late. Poirot's gaze lingered, sensing a crack in the young man's bravado. He moved to Eliza, whose defiance softened into vulnerability. "I was in my room writing letters, to friends in London, to Victor." Her voice caught on the name. "Father and I argued about him last night. He said Victor would ruin us, but I'd never hurt him." "No witness to your solitude, mademoiselle?" Poirot asked gently. She shook her head, her scarf slipping slightly. Poirot noted the faint ink stains on her fingers, proof of her letter writing, perhaps, but no alibi. Dr. Sinclair spoke next, his voice measured but strained. "I was in the library until midnight, reading medical journals. This morning I was up early, reviewing notes in my room until breakfast." He adjusted his glasses, avoiding Poirot's gaze. "And your discussion with Lord Harrington about investments?" Poirot pressed, recalling the dinner conversation. Sinclair flushed. "A misunderstanding. He thought I'd mismanaged funds, but it was a clerical error. I'd never harm him." Poirot turned to Graves, whose posture remained impeccable. "I retired to the servants' quarters after serving dinner," the butler said. "I was there all night, preparing the staff schedule. This morning I was in the pantry until breakfast." Poirot's eyes lingered on the scar. "And your loyalty?" He knelt by the fountain, noting the silk scrap on the rose thorn, its pale blue hue suggestive of a lady's gown. The cigarette butt, bearing Arthur's brand, was partially crushed, as if deliberately placed. The footprint under the bench, small, delicate, perhaps a woman's, intrigued him most. "A clue or a deception?" he murmured. He inspected the walls, running his fingers along the stone. A faint scratch near the base caught his eye, barely visible. A ladder, perhaps, he wondered, though none was found nearby. The oak door's lock was heavy, the key still in place, but Poirot noticed a slight looseness in the mechanism. "Not tampered with, yet not infallible," he noted. Inside the study, Poirot examined the dagger's display case. One slot was empty, but the other blades were undisturbed. A ledger on the desk caught his attention, Harrington's will, recently amended. It reduced Arthur's allowance, threatened to disinherit Eliza unless she abandoned Victor, and allocated funds to Dr. Sinclair's medical research, though with a note questioning its returns. A curious entry mentioned a pension for Graves, delayed due to financial constraints. No mention of Miss Poole, but a servant's whisper hinted at her closeness to the Lord. Too close, perhaps. Poirot paced, his stick tapping. All have motives. Lady Amelia inherits wealth. Arthur's debts demanded. Eliza's love defies her father. Sinclair's reputation is at stake. Graves harbors grudges. Poole hides pain. But the method? How? He requested the household's movements be mapped. A maid reported seeing Arthur near the courtyard at dawn, contradicting his billiard room claim. Eliza's letters found in her room contained veiled threats to her father. "You'll regret this, father." Lady Amelia's tea tray held traces of laudanum, confirmed by Dr. Sinclair as medicinal. But was it? Graves' past surfaced in a whispered rumor, a forgery conviction decades ago. Murder Mystery. If you're nestled in a cozy corner, or perhaps listening by a crackling fire, you're in for a treat as Hercule Poirot sifts through clues and shadows in this 1920s tale of intrigue. We're deep into our 90-minute journey, and the web of deception is tightening. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. Perhaps a quiet countryside inn, or a bustling urban loft. Now, let's return to St. Valerie Estate, where every clue whispers a lie. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of St. Valerie Estate. But within the walls of the courtyard, the air remained heavy with the chill of murder. Hercule Poirot stood by the marble fountain, its gentle trickle a mocking contrast to the violence that had stained the grass only hours before. Lord Reginald Harrington's body had been removed, but the scene lingered in Poirot's mind. The jeweled dagger, the locked doors, the absence of footprints. An impossible crime, he murmured, his green eyes narrowing. But impossibility is merely a challenge to the little gray cells. Poirot's morning interviews had revealed a tapestry of motives. Lady Amelia's inheritance, Arthur's debts, Eliza's rebellion, Dr. Sinclair's financial disputes, Graves' delayed pension, Miss Poole's hidden resentment. But motives alone did not solve the puzzle. The method, the how, was the key. He returned to the courtyard, Sergeant Wilkins trailing with a notepad, his face a mixture of awe and confusion. "Mr. Poirot, I've never seen a case like this," the sergeant admitted. "No way in, no way out. It's unnatural." "No, mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice steady. "Nature obeys logic, and so does crime. We must find the thread that unravels this knot." He began with the clues already uncovered. The silk scrap, pale blue and delicate, hung on a rose thorn near the fountain. Poirot examined it closely, noting its fine weave, likely from a lady's gown or scarf. Lady Amelia's wardrobe included such hues, as did Eliza's red scarf, though the shade differed. Harrington's will revealed more. Arthur's allowance slashed, Eliza's inheritance conditional on abandoning her artist lover Victor Lang. Dr. Sinclair's funding was under scrutiny, and Graves's pension was noted as pending review. Miss Poole's name appeared nowhere, but a cryptic note in Harrington's hand read, "Lydia, reparations?" Poirot's mustache twitched. Reparations for what, I wonder? He summoned the household staff for further questioning, focusing on the night's details. The cook, Mrs. Baxter, a stout woman with flour-dusted hands, revealed a tidbit. "I saw Mr. Arthur near the courtyard gates at dawn, sir, looking furtive. He said he was just out for a smoke, but he was pale as a ghost." This contradicted Arthur's claim of staying in the billiard room until 2. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A crack in the alibi. Next, he spoke to the valet, Mr. Collins, who admitted overhearing Miss Poole arguing with Lord Harrington a week prior. "She was in tears, sir, saying you've no right to treat me so. He told her to keep quiet or she'd regret it." Poirot noted the maid's resentment, now tinged with a personal edge. In Eliza's room, Poirot examined her letters. Among the pages to Victor Lang were heated words. "Father will never understand us. If he cuts me off, I'll make him pay." A threat, but was it mere frustration? Her ink-stained fingers corroborated her writing, but her solitude at the time of the murder remained unverified. Dr. Sinclair's medical bag, left in the library, yielded a surprise. A vial of cyanide, labeled for research purposes. Sinclair, when confronted, bristled. "It's for experiments, Poirot, not murder." Reginald knew of my work, yet his trembling hands suggested fear, not indignation. Lady Amelia's tea tray, still in her room, held traces of laudanum, confirmed by a quick test Poirot conducted with a pocket kit. Miss Poole admitted adding it, but only at Lady Amelia's request. She needed rest, sir. I meant no harm. Groundskeeper reported a ladder missing from the shed, last seen days ago. Poirot's pulse quickened. A ladder could breach the wall, but why no marks? He hypothesized a rope or pulley, but the spikes atop the walls made that unlikely. Another red herring. Back in the drawing room, Poirot gathered the suspects for a subtle test. Mes amis, I propose a theory. The dagger was thrown from above, perhaps through a window. Gasps followed, but he watched their reactions. Lady Amelia's eyes widened. Arthur scoffed. Eliza clutched her scarf. Sinclair adjusted his glasses. Graves remained impassive. Poole flinched. The windows, however, were locked, their latches rusted. Another misdirection, but their responses were telling. Poirot visited the cellar, prompted by a hunch about the courtyard's proximity. A dusty passage, long sealed, led toward the courtyard wall, but ended in a bricked-up arch. A relic of older days, Poirot noted, but its existence suggested hidden roots. He tapped the bricks, finding them solid. Yet the idea lingered. A secret passage, perhaps not fully sealed. As evening fell, Poirot overheard a heated exchange between Arthur and Dr. Sinclair in the library. "You know I can't pay yet," Arthur hissed. "Give me time." Sinclair's reply was cold. "You're in too deep, boy." Blackmail, perhaps? Poirot filed it away. Miss Poole, caught alone in the pantry, let slip a revelation under Poirot's gentle probing. "He was kind once, the master," she whispered, tears welling. "But after, he turned cold. Said I'd get nothing. An affair, or worse." Her motive deepened, but her frail frame seemed unlikely for a dagger's thrust. Poirot retired to his room, his notebook filling with diagrams. The courtyard's layout, the suspect's movements, the clue's contradictions. The silk scrap, the cigarette, the footprint, the fountain's seam. All pointed to a staged scene. Reading spot. You're perfectly poised for the mounting suspense in this 1920s Hercule Poirot adventure. We're well into our 90-minute tale of deception and deduction, and the complications are about to thicken the plot like a fog over the Thames. Do share in the comments where you're joining us from. Maybe a historic manor or a modern cafe. Now, let's rejoin Hercule Poirot at St. Valerie Estate, where twists lurk around every shadowed corner. The evening shadows lengthened across St. Valerie Estate, casting the Georgian facade in a somber hue, as if the very stones mourned Lord Reginald Harrington's untimely death. Hercule Poirot sat in the library, surrounded by the scent of aged leather and flickering candlelight, his notebook open before him. The little gray cells were in overdrive, sifting through the day's revelations. The silk scrap on the rose thorn, the suspicious cigarette butt, the delicate footprint, the faint seam in the fountain, and the sealed passage in the cellar. Each clue seemed to point in conflicting directions, like arrows in a storm. The puzzle is no longer simple, Poirot murmured to himself, stroking his mustache. It is a labyrinth, with twists that confound the unwary. Sergeant Wilkins entered, his face flushed from the chill outside. Mr. Poirot, sir, there's a visitor at the gates. A Mr. Victor Lang. Says he's here for Miss Eliza. Shall I let him in? Poirot's eyes sparkled with interest. Ah, the artist. Oui, let him enter. A new piece to the board, perhaps. Victor Lang's arrival was no surprise. Eliza's letters had mentioned him often, and Harrington's disapproval had been a sore point. But in this house of suspects, a newcomer could complicate matters. Or reveal them. Victor Lang strode into the drawing room 10 minutes later, a tall, disheveled figure in a threadbare coat, his hair tousled and his eyes wild with worry. He was perhaps 26, with the lean build of a bohemian. Against Harrington's wishes, he threatened to disinherit her, called me a fortune hunter. Eliza nodded tearfully. Father said you'd ruin us, but I love him, Poirot. Victor had nothing to do with this. Poirot's gaze was piercing. Love is a powerful motive, mademoiselle, but so is desperation. Monsieur Lang, have you debts? Enemies? Lang flushed. I'm an artist, not a banker. Debts, yes, supplies, rent. But I'd never kill for money. Harrington was a tyrant, but not worth blood. The interview revealed a twist. Lang admitted to sending Eliza a letter threatening to expose Harrington's secrets if he interfered further. I meant to scare him, not harm him, Lang insisted. Poirot noted the envelope in Eliza's possession, postmarked London, dated 2 days prior. A red herring, or a genuine threat? As the evening wore on, complications mounted. Poirot retired to the study to examine Harrington's personal papers more closely. Among the ledgers he uncovered a bombshell, correspondence between Lady Amelia and Dr. Sinclair spanning months. Intimate letters, hidden in a locked drawer, the key conveniently left in the desk, spoke of a long-standing affair. My dearest Edmund, one read, Reginald suspects nothing, but our future together depends on his will. We must be patient. Another hinted at Sinclair's financial woes. Your investments have faltered. Perhaps Reginald's death would free us both. Poirot's eyebrows rose. Ah, the classic entanglement. Motive and opportunity intertwined. Confronting Lady Amelia privately, she broke down, admitting the affair but denying murder. Edmund and I loved each other, but we planned to wait. Reginald was changing his will, cutting Arthur, threatening Eliza. We argued, yes, but I was in my room sedated with laudanum. Sinclair, when questioned separately, corroborated with a twist of his own. Amelia is right. We were lovers. But Harrington discovered it last week. He threatened to expose me, ruin my practice. Arthur's alibi cracked further. The cook confirmed seeing him near the courtyard. But now Arthur claimed he was retrieving a hidden flask, evidence of his vice, but not innocence. Eliza, distraught by Lang's arrival and the mounting accusations, fled the house in a twist that sent the household into panic. She's run off, Graves announced, alerting Poirot. A search ensued, lanterns bobbing in the dark gardens. They found her in the stables, hysterical, clutching a bloody handkerchief. It's from a nosebleed, she sobbed. But I was so scared. Everyone suspects me. Poirot examined the cloth. The blood was fresh, but the pattern matched a simple cut, not violence. A red herring? planted to frame her, or genuine fear? Miss Poole, during the search, let slip another revelation under Poirot's probing. The master. He fathered a child on a servant years ago, not me, but my sister. He paid her off, but she died in poverty. I came here to watch, to wait. Her eyes burned with vengeance, but her alibi held. The servants' quarters were verified by Mrs. Baxter. Yet Poirot wondered, was Poole the illegitimate daughter seeking justice? Graves, ever the stoic, revealed a complication of his own when Poirot pressed about the missing ladder. It was in the shed last night, sir, but this morning gone. I thought the groundskeeper misplaced it. A search of the estate yielded the ladder in a remote barn, covered in fresh mud, but no footprints leading to the courtyard wall. Used elsewhere, or a clever plant? Poirot pondered. As midnight approached, a storm brewed, thunder rumbling like distant artillery. Poirot gathered the household in the drawing room for a tense announcement. Mes amis. The threads tangled further. Affairs, blackmails, threats. Each of you hides a secret. But the courtyard's lock, the dagger's path, remains the enigma. He demonstrated a theory. Using a string tied to the key, one could lock the door from outside after exiting via a hypothetical passage. Gasps echoed. But the sealed cellar passage disproved it. For now. Victor Lang, overhearing, added a twist. Harrington won lamplight. As the clock struck 1, Poirot retired, his mind a tempest. Complications breed twists, but the truth emerges from chaos, he said softly. The storm raged on, mirroring the turmoil at Sainte Valerie. Sleep would be elusive. The little gray cells demanded vigilance. Chapter 6. Midnight Revelations. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Narratives. I'm Evelyn Thorne, your guide through the thickening fog of blood at Sainte Valerie Courtyard, a Poirot murder mystery. If you're cozied up by a hearth or listening under a starry sky, you're in for a riveting chapter as Hercule Poirot edges closer to the truth in this 1920s tale of deception. We're deep into our 90-minute journey, and the revelations are about to strike like lightning. Pause here if you'd like to guess the killer. It's a puzzle worthy of your wits. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from, a misty moor or a city flat. Now, let's return to Sainte Valerie Estate, where the storm outside mirrors the turmoil within. The night of Lord Reginald Harrington's murder cloaked Sainte Valerie Estate in a tempest of wind and rain, the storm's fury rattling the windows like an angry spirit. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room, his silhouette sharp against the flickering firelight, his notebook clutched tightly as he addressed the assembled household. The air was thick with tension, the suspects' faces a gallery of fear, guilt, and defiance. Lady Amelia sat with rigid poise, her hands folded but trembling. Arthur slouched, his eyes bloodshot from whiskey. Eliza clung to Victor Lang, her artist lover, whose arrival had stirred the pot of motives. Dr. Edmund Sinclair adjusted his glasses nervously, while Mr. Horace Graves stood like a sentinel, his scar stark in the lamplight. Miss Lydia Poole hovered near the door, her apron twisted in her hands. Mes amis, Poirot began, his voice deliberate and soothing. The murder of Lord Harrington is a puzzle most bitter, not laudanum, but something sharper. Poison, Poirot declared, snatching the cup. Mademoiselle, did you drink? No, I dropped it, Eliza gasped, trembling in Victor's arms. Poirot's mind raced. Another attempt on a life, or a distraction? He ordered the tea sent to Dr. Sinclair for analysis, noting the physician's reluctant nod. "Arsenic likely," Sinclair muttered after a quick test, his hands unsteady. "Enough to kill." Poirot's gaze swept the room. A second crime, prevented by chance. The murderer grows bold or desperate. He instructed Sergeant Wilkins, hovering nearby, to seal the house. "No one leaves. The stone traps us, but it also traps the guilty." Turning to the fountain's clue, Poirot led Wilkins and Victor to the courtyard, braving the rain. The seam in the basin, discovered earlier, yielded under pressure. A small compartment opened, revealing a sodden note. "Beware the shadows within." No signature, but the handwriting matched Harrington's. "A warning or a taunt?" Poirot mused, pocketing the note. The fountain's water flow remained uneven, suggesting a mechanism below. He tapped the base, hearing a hollow echo. A passage, perhaps, hidden in plain sight. Back inside, Poirot confronted the household about the sealed cellar passage. Graves admitted its existence, used decades ago for smuggling during the Napoleonic Wars. "Bricked up long before my time, sir," he said, but Poirot noted a flicker in his eyes. A midnight search of the cellar with Wilkins' lantern casting eerie shadows revealed the bricked arch, solid, but with fresh scratches on the mortar. "Recent work," Poirot said, his voice low. "Someone sought access, or escape." A new twist emerged. The missing ladder, found in the barn, bore traces of courtyard soil, suggesting it was used recently. Yet the wall's iron spikes and lack of marks baffled Poirot. A ladder to nowhere, he wondered aloud. Victor, trailing behind, mentioned the family curse again, a tale of hidden wealth in the courtyard, dismissed by Harrington, but persistent in local lore. Questioned, she broke down. He was hiding money, offshore accounts, untaxed. Victor wanted to expose it to free me, but I begged him not to. Victor nodded, his face grim. I threatened to go to the papers, but I was in London. His train ticket produced reluctantly confirmed his alibi, for now. Dr. Sinclair's blackmail of Arthur came under scrutiny. I lent him money, yes, Sinclair admitted, but only to protect my investment in his father's company. Harrington accused me of embezzlement, a lie. Yet, the cyanide vial and sedative syringe in his bag suggested darker possibilities. Research tools, he insisted, but Poirot's doubts grew. Graves, questioned about the cellar scratches, claimed ignorance. Vandals, perhaps, from years ago. But a maid's whisper revealed Graves had been seen near the cellar late at night, carrying a crowbar. Checking the foundations, he'd said. Poirot's mustache twitched. Another lie? Miss Poole, trembling under Poirot's gentle probing, revealed a heart-wrenching truth. I'm his daughter, Mr. Poirot. Not my sister, me. He seduced my mother, a maid here, then cast her out. I came to serve, to watch him, to hate him. Her motive was raw, but her frail frame and verified alibi, serving tea at the critical hour, cast doubt on her as the killer. Poirot staged another experiment, locking the courtyard doors and testing the key. A faint click suggested a duplicate key, hidden somewhere. The lock was not secure, he told Wilkins. Someone planned this meticulously. He hypothesized a timed mechanism, a string or weight to turn the key from outside, but found no evidence yet. A startling revelation came from the groundskeeper, who reported hearing a low hum from the fountain the night before, like a motor. Poirot returned to the courtyard, rain-soaked but undeterred. Pressing the fountain's base, he found a lever, rusted but functional. With Wilkins' help, he triggered it. A section of the basin slid open, revealing a narrow "Keep it." He dismissed them, his mind racing. The passage, the poison, the duplicate key, all suggested a conspiracy, not a lone killer. Two hands, perhaps, or one with an accomplice, he mused. The clock struck 2, the storm unrelenting. Poirot's notebook filled with diagrams. The passage's route, the suspect's lies, the clue's contradictions. "The revelation dawns," he whispered, "but the night is not yet done." Chapter 7. Unraveling Threads. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Narratives. I'm Evelyn Thorne, your companion in the shadowy depths of Blood at St. Valerie Courtyard, a Poirot murder mystery. Whether you're curled up with a warm blanket or listening as the rain taps your window, you're in for a thrilling turn as Hercule Poirot weaves the clues into a tapestry of truth. We're deep in our 90-minute journey through this 1920s enigma, and the threads of deception are beginning to unravel. Pause here if you want to piece together the killer's identity. Your guess might surprise you. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. A cozy village cottage or a lively urban hub? Now, let's return to St. Valerie Estate, where the storm subsides but the tension soars. The storm that had battered St. Valerie Estate through the night of Lord Reginald Harrington's murder gave way to a damp, gray dawn, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and roses. Hercule Poirot stood in the courtyard, his overcoat glistening with lingering raindrops, his eyes fixed on the marble fountain where secrets had begun to surface. The hidden passage beneath, revealed the previous night, was a revelation, but its narrow, muddy confines raised more questions than answers. The jeweled dagger, the locked doors, the silk scrap, the cigarette butt, the delicate footprint, all swirled in Poirot's mind, each clue a thread in a tangled skein. "The truth," he murmured, stroking his mustache. "It is close, but the threads must be untangled with care." Inside, the household was restless, the weight of suspicion fraying nerves. Poirot gathered them in the drawing. "Each of you holds a piece of the puzzle. Motives of greed, love, revenge. But today, we unravel the threads." He started with the fountain's passage, a discovery that had shaken the household. "This secret way," Poirot said, holding up a sketch of the courtyard, "connects to the cellar, bypassing the bricked arch. Yet it is too narrow for a body, too muddy for clean escape. Was it used, or is it a distraction?" He watched their reactions. Lady Amelia's lips tightened. Arthur swore softly. Eliza gasped. Sinclair adjusted his glasses. Graves remained stoic. Poole's hands stilled. Poirot turned to the clues. The silk scrap, pale blue, suggested a lady's gown. Lady Amelia's wardrobe held such fabric, but so did a shawl in Eliza's room. Planted perhaps to mislead, Poirot mused. The cigarette butt, Arthur's brand, was too pristine, as if placed deliberately. "Monsieur Arthur, you admit to dropping it, but at dawn, not midnight." Arthur nodded, his eyes hollow. The footprint, small and delicate, pointed to a woman, or a man in smaller shoes. Poirot's gaze lingered on Miss Poole, whose feet matched the size, but her alibi held firm. A new lead emerged. The groundskeeper, Mr. Tate, reported finding a duplicate key to the courtyard doors in the stables, hidden in a hay bale. "Tarnished but functional," Tate said, handing it to Poirot. The detective examined it, noting its slight wear. "A second key," he said, "means the lock was never secure."
Someone planned this crime with precision. Poirot confronted Graves about his late-night cellar visit, crowbar in hand. The butler's composure wavered. "I was inspecting the foundations, sir, after hearing noises. The storm loosened stones." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the scratches on the bricked arch? Recent, non?" Graves hesitated, then nodded. "I checked it, yes, but found it sealed." Miss Poole, under Poirot's gentle probing, broke down further. "I hated him," she whispered, tears streaming. "He was my father."
Count. "A lie, Monsieur Sinclair?" Poirot asked. Sinclair paled but held firm. Lady Amelia, questioned about the affair, revealed a twist. Reginald planned to change the will to favor charity, cutting us all. I begged him to reconsider, but he was adamant. "I was sedated, Poirot. I couldn't have acted." Yet the laudanum, Poirot noted, could have been administered later, her alibi shaky. Victor Lang, the outsider, offered a new angle. Harrington mentioned a rival industrialist, Mr. Carver, who threatened him over a business deal. Could he have hired someone? Poirot investigated. Carver was in London, verified by telegrams, but the idea of an external hand lingered. The arsenic in Eliza's tea, analyzed by Sinclair, was traced to the pantry, accessible to all. A distraction, Poirot theorized, to shift suspicion. Eliza's nosebleed handkerchief, re-examined, bore no arsenic traces, a genuine accident, not a plant. Poirot returned to the courtyard, testing the duplicate key. It turned smoothly, but a faint click suggested a timing mechanism, perhaps rigged to lock after the killer's exit. "Ingenious," he said, "but not foolproof." He re-examined the fountain, finding a hidden lever that adjusted water flow, a possible trigger for the passage. "The courtyard itself is an accomplice," he murmured. A breakthrough came from a maid, Jenny, who overheard a late-night argument between Harrington and Graves a week prior. "The master said, 'You'll get nothing if you talk,'" Jenny whispered. Graves replied, "I know your secret, my lord." Poirot confronted Graves, who admitted to discovering Harrington's offshore accounts, millions hidden from tax authorities. "I wanted my pension secured, nothing more," Graves insisted, but his access to the cellar and knowledge of the passage made him a prime suspect. Poirot staged a final test, gathering the household in the courtyard at dusk. "Imagine," he said. "The killer enters via the passage, strikes with the dagger, locks the door with the duplicate key, and escapes. But the passage is too narrow. So how? He demonstrated. A string, tied to the key, filled with connections. Lady Amelia and Sinclair's affair, Arthur's blackmail, Eliza's threats, Graves' knowledge, Poole's revenge. "The truth is near," he said. "But one final piece remains." He dismissed them, his mind racing. The clock struck 10, the courtyard silent but for the fountain's trickle. "Tomorrow," Poirot vowed, "justice will be served." Chapter 8. The Hidden Truth. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Narratives. I'm Evelyn Thorne, your guide through the twisting shadows of Blood at St. Valerie Courtyard, a Poirot murder mystery. Whether you're nestled by a fireside or listening as the autumn wind howls, you're in for a pivotal moment in this 1920s tale of intrigue. We're deep into our 90-minute journey, and Hercule Poirot is closing in on the truth, peeling back layers of deception. Pause now if you'd like to wager a guess at the killer. Your instincts might surprise you. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. A quiet hamlet or a vibrant city square? Now, let's return to St. Valerie Estate, where the hidden truth begins to emerge from the fog. The second day at St. Valerie Estate dawned gray and heavy, the air thick with the aftermath of the storm that had raged through the night. Hercule Poirot stood in his guest room, gazing out at the courtyard where Lord Reginald Harrington had met his end. The marble fountain glistened with morning dew, its serene trickle belying the violence it had witnessed. Poirot's notebook lay open on the desk, filled with diagrams of the hidden passage, the duplicate key, the silk scrap, the cigarette butt, and the delicate footprint. The revelation of a possible poisoning before the dagger's thrust had shifted the puzzle, but the pieces were still scattered. "The truth," Poirot murmured, adjusting his tie. "It hides in the shadows, but the little gray cells see all." The household was on edge, the weight of suspicion fraying tempers. Breakfast was a tense affair, with Lady Amelia barely touching her toast. "Lord Harrington for 20 years, sir." "Yes, I knew of the old passage, smuggler's routes from the war days, but I never used it." "The key?" "I saw it in the stables, as I said, but I didn't touch it." Poirot pressed further, recalling the maid's report of Graves with a crowbar near the cellar. "I was checking for storm damage," Graves insisted, but his eyes flickered. A lie or fear? Next, Poirot confronted Miss Poole, whose confession of being Harrington's illegitimate daughter had added a raw motive. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "He ruined my mother, Mr. Poirot. Left her to die in shame. I hated him, yes, but I didn't kill him. I was in the kitchen, as Mrs. Baxter said." Poirot noted her small feet, matching the courtyard footprint, but her alibi held. Yet her access to the pantry, where the arsenic was found, was troubling. "The tea, mademoiselle?" Poirot asked. "You prepared it for Miss Eliza. Was it tampered with?" Poole's eyes widened. "No, sir. I'd never harm her." Her sincerity rang true, but Poirot reserved judgment. Arthur Harrington was next, his defiance crumbling under Poirot's gaze. "I forged the will, yes," he admitted, "to save myself from Sinclair's blackmail. But murder? I was drunk, hiding my flask in the courtyard at dawn. That's all." The cigarette butt, Poirot noted, supported his story, but its placement felt staged. "Someone wanted you suspected, Monsieur Arthur," Poirot said. Arthur's face paled. "Sinclair, maybe. He's got his claws in me." Dr. Sinclair, summoned to the library, bristled at the accusation. "Blackmail? Nonsense. I lent Arthur money to protect the family's reputation. Harrington's embezzlement claims were baseless. I've shown you my accounts." But Poirot's earlier discovery of discrepancies in Sinclair's ledger, funds siphoned offshore, cast doubt. The cyanide vial and sedative syringe, a new clue surfaced. The housekeeper, Mrs. Baxter, reported finding a torn piece of paper in the study's waste bin, overlooked earlier. It read, "Meet me at midnight, courtyard, urgent." The handwriting was Harrington's, but the recipient was unclear. "A trap," Poirot mused, "set by the victim or the killer." The paper's edge matched a notepad in Eliza's room, but she denied writing it. "Father and I argued, but I never asked to meet him," she insisted, her voice breaking. Poirot returned to the courtyard, examining the fountain's lever again. With Sergeant Wilkins' help, he explored the passage beneath, finding it led to a small chamber under the cellar, untouched for decades. Inside, a rusted box held only dust, no jewels, no fortune. Another red herring, Poirot sighed. But the chamber's existence confirmed the passage's use. Mud on the ladder found in the barn matched the chamber's floor, suggesting recent activity. A startling revelation came from Jenny, the maid, who overheard Sinclair and Lady Amelia whispering in the library the previous night. She said, "It's done, Edmund. We're free," Jenny reported. Confronted, Lady Amelia gasped. "I meant we were free to love, now that Reginald knew of our affair. Not murder." Sinclair nodded, but their synchronized story felt rehearsed. Poirot tested a theory. The dagger's shallow wound suggested poisoning first. He requested the claret decanter from dinner, served by Graves. A quick test, using a chemical kit from Sinclair's bag, revealed traces of arsenic. Not enough to kill instantly, but sufficient to weaken. "The claret," Poirot said. "Drunk by all, but only Harrington died. A targeted dose, perhaps in his glass." Graves, questioned again, admitted to serving the claret, but swore he didn't tamper with it. "I poured from the same decanter," he said. Yet his knowledge of the passage and the duplicate key kept him in Poirot's sights. Poole, too, had axed blackmail. The forged will, the passage, the poison. "The hidden truth is close," he whispered. "But one shadow remains." The clock struck 11. The courtyard silent but for the fountain's endless song. Tomorrow, justice would dawn. Chapter 9. The Final Deduction. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Mystery Manor Narratives. I'm Evelyn Thorne, your guide through the climactic unraveling of Blood at St. Valerie Courtyard, a Poirot murder mystery. Whether you're nestled by a cozy fire or listening as the autumn leaves rustle outside, you're about to witness Hercule Poirot's little gray cells at their finest in this 1920s tale of deception. We're nearing the end of our 90-minute journey, and the truth is about to shine through the fog. Pause now if you want to make one last guess at the killer. Your deduction might rival Poirot's. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from, a windswept coastal town or a bustling city street. Now, let's return to St. Valerie Estate, where the final pieces of the puzzle fall into place. The third morning at St. Valerie Estate dawned with a fragile calm, the gray skies clearing to reveal a pale sun over the Sussex hills. Hercule Poirot stood in the courtyard, his patent leather shoes glinting with dew, his eyes fixed on the marble fountain that had guarded its secrets so fiercely. The hidden passage beneath, the duplicate key, the arsenic-laced claret, the silk scrap, the cigarette butt, the delicate footprint. All had woven a web of deception around Lord Reginald Harrington's murder. But now Poirot's mind was a crucible, refining the chaos into order. "The truth," he murmured, stroking his mustache. "It is no longer hidden. The little gray cells have seen the pattern." Inside, the household was a cauldron of tension, each suspect aware that Poirot's net was closing. Lady Amelia sat in the drawing room, her elegance strained by sleepless nights. Arthur clutched a coffee cup, his bravado replaced by dread glinting. This key, found in the stables, unlocked the courtyard from within. But how? The doors were sealed, the walls unscalable, the windows locked. The answer lies below. He gestured to the fountain, pressing the hidden lever. A low groan echoed as the basin slid open, revealing the narrow passage to the cellar. Gasps rippled through the group. This passage, known to few, allowed entry and exit unseen. But it is too cramped for a body. So how was the crime done? Poirot paced, his stick tapping rhythmically. The dagger, ceremonial, was a distraction. The true cause of death was poison, arsenic, administered in the claret at dinner. The shallow wound, as Dr. Sinclair's autopsy confirmed, suggests Harrington was already dying when stabbed. The killer, or killers, staged the scene to baffle us. He turned to the clues. The silk scrap, pale blue, was torn from a shawl in Mademoiselle Eliza's room, but placed deliberately to mislead. The cigarette butt, Monsieur Arthur's brand, was too pristine, dropped not at dawn but by design. The footprint, small and delicate, matches Miss Poole's shoes, but her alibi holds. These are red herrings, meant to scatter suspicion. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he addressed Lady Amelia. Madame, your affair with Dr. Sinclair gave you motive, freedom, and wealth. Your laudanum alibi is weak. You could have acted before sleep. Lady Amelia gasped, her hands trembling. I loved Reginald, despite everything. I was unconscious. Dr. Sinclair bristled. You accuse us unjustly, Poirot. My accounts prove my innocence, and I was in the library. Yet Poirot held up the ledger, its offshore transactions damning. Embezzlement, Monsieur Sinclair, funded your lifestyle. Harrington's threat to expose you was dire. Arthur, pale, interrupted. What about me? The forged will adjusts the water flow, a signal perhaps to an accomplice. The claret, poisoned, was served by Monsieur Graves, but the glass was filled by another. The dagger taken from the study was wielded not in passion but in calculation. He paused, his gaze sweeping the group. The killer is Lady Amelia, with Dr. Sinclair as her accomplice. The motive, wealth and freedom. Harrington's will changes threatened your future, madame. Your affair, discovered, risked divorce and ruin. Sinclair, your embezzlement exposed, faced disgrace. Together you planned a perfect crime. Lady Amelia's composure shattered. No, it's a lie! Sinclair leapt to his feet. You've no proof, Poirot. Poirot raised a hand. The proof is in the method. The arsenic from Sinclair's medical bag was slipped into Harrington's claret at dinner. Madame, you poured his glass, a task usually Graves. You knew he'd drink heavily, masking the poison's taste. As he weakened, you lured him to the courtyard with a note. Meet me at midnight. Urgent. The passage allowed Sinclair to enter, stab the dying man, and exit, locking the door with the duplicate key pulled by a string through a crack. He produced a tiny thread found near the lock. This string, overlooked, sealed your fate. The silk scrap from your shawl, madame, was a mistake, torn as you moved through the roses. The cigarette planted to frame Arthur. The footprint, a clever touch implicating Miss Poole but clearing her with her alibi. Sinclair shouted, Preposterous, the passage is too narrow. Poirot smiled. For a body, yes, but not for a man of your slim build, Doctor. The mud on the ladder confirms its use. And the note in the fountain, "Beware the shadows within," was Harrington's warning of his suspicions hidden too late. Lady Amelia sobbed, collapsing into a chair. "It was for us, Edmund. He'd have destroyed us." Sinclair's defiance crumbled. "We only wanted freedom," he muttered. Poirot turned to Sergeant Wilkin. Moments of blood at St. Valerie Courtyard, a Poirot murder mystery. Whether you're wrapped in a blanket by a glowing hearth or listening as dawn breaks over your own quiet corner, you're about to witness Hercule Poirot bring this 1920s tale to its satisfying close. We've reached the end of our 90-minute journey, where justice dawns over the shadows of deception. If you guessed the killer, well done. Share your thoughts in the comments. And tell me where you're tuning in from. A misty Sussex village or a lively urban cafe. Now, let's return to St. Valerie Estate, where the courtyard's secrets are laid bare and order is restored. The sun rose over St. Valerie Estate on the third morning, casting a golden glow across the Sussex hills, as if nature itself sought to cleanse the stain of murder. The courtyard, once a sanctuary of roses and marble, now stood as a silent witness to the unraveling of a crime most ingenious. Hercule Poirot, his suit impeccable despite the sleepless nights, stood by the fountain, its gentle trickle a reminder of the secrets it had guarded. The hidden passage, the duplicate key, the arsenic-laced claret, the silk scrap, the cigarette butt, the delicate footprint, all had been woven into a tapestry of truth by Poirot's little gray cells. Lady Amelia Harrington and Dr. Edmund Sinclair, exposed as the murderers, were in custody, their confessions echoing through the manor like the tolling of a bell. Poirot gathered the remaining household in the drawing room, its velvet drapes parted to let in the morning light, softening the room's somber air. Arthur Harrington sat heavily, his whiskey tumbler replaced by a cup of black coffee, his face etched with relief and guilt. Eliza Harrington, clinging to Victor Lang's arm, looked fragile but resolute, her red scarf a defiant splash of color. Mr. Horace Graves stood by the fireplace, his butler's composure restored, though his scar seemed less pronounced in the daylight. Miss Lydia Poole, her apron smoothed, stood quietly, her eyes no longer haunted but weary. Sergeant Man, the silk scrap, torn from Madame's shawl, was an error. The cigarette butt, planted to frame Monsieur Arthur. The footprint, a nod to Mademoiselle Poole's shoes. But her alibi cleared her. Arthur leaned forward, his voice hoarse. "You're sure it was them, Poirot? Mother? And Sinclair?" His disbelief was tinged with relief, as if the truth, however painful, freed him from suspicion. "Oui, monsieur," Poirot replied gently. "Your mother's affair with Sinclair, combined with your father's threat to alter the will, pushed them to act. The offshore accounts, discovered in Sinclair's ledger, confirmed his embezzlement, a secret Harrington was poised to expose. Their motive was clear: wealth and freedom." Eliza, tears in her eyes, clutched Victor's hand. "But why frame me, Poirot? The silk, the note. It pointed to me." Victor's face darkened, his protective arm tightening around her. Poirot's gaze softened. "Mademoiselle, the shawl was chosen because it resembled yours. A cruel misdirection. The note, 'Meet me at midnight,' was in your father's hand but written to Madame Amelia, luring him to the courtyard. Your innocence is proven by your letters and Victor's alibi in London. Graves stepped forward, his voice steady. And my role, sir? You suspected me, the passage, the key. His scar twitched faintly, a reminder of his past. Poirot nodded. Your knowledge of the passage, your grudge over the pension, made you a suspect, Monsieur Graves. But your loyalty, verified by the staff, and your absence from the courtyard at the critical hour cleared you. The crowbar was for storm repairs, not murder. Miss Poole, her voice barely audible, asked, And me, Mr. Poirot? My father's shame. Her revelation as Harrington's illegitimate daughter hung heavy in the room. Poirot's tone was kind. Mademoiselle Poole, your pain was real, your motive strong. But your alibi, confirmed by Mrs. Baxter, and the arsenic's source, Sinclair's bag, not the pantry, exonerate you. The footprint from the real motive, his wealth and secrets. Eliza's voice trembled. What happens now, Poirot? The estate? Our lives? Victor's hands steadied her, his eyes fierce with determination. Poirot's expression was solemn. The will, as it stands, favors you and Monsieur Arthur, with provisions for charity. Madame Amelia's arrest voids her claim. The estate is yours, but its burdens are heavy. You must choose your path. Perhaps Paris with Monsieur Lang? Arthur, his voice low, added, And Sinclair's blackmail. I'm free of it, but the debts remain. His hands shook, the weight of his father's death and his own mistakes pressing down. Oui, Poirot said, but the truth frees you to rebuild. The offshore accounts now exposed will be investigated. Your honesty, monsieur, begins your redemption. Graves bowed slightly. The household will continue, sir, for the young master and miss. His loyalty, once questioned, now shone clear. Miss Poole, wiping her eyes, whispered, I'll stay too, for Eliza, for the house. My mother's pain is over. Her resolve was quiet but firm. A new chapter beginning. Poirot closed his notebook, his mustache twitching with satisfaction. The order, it is restored. The little gray cells have prevailed. Justice, mes amis, is not vengeance. It is truth made visible. As the household dispersed, Sergeant Wilkins approached. Mr. Poirot, you're a marvel. The chief constable will hear of this. Will you stay for the inquest? Poirot shook his head. Non, Monsieur Wilkins. My work here is done. The train to London awaits, and other puzzles call. But I leave Saint Valerie in capable hands. He walked to the courtyard one last time, the fountains trickle a gentle farewell. The roses, still blooming despite the tragedy, seemed to nod in approval. Poirot's valise was packed, tisane, cigarette case, and notebook intact. Jenkins, the driver, awaited with the Rolls-Royce, his